Yup, that's me, walking out of prison for the first time in 17 years, and you can see it all over my face. I've been through hell. 2003, I was sentenced to 144 years in prison by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and to be honest with you, I'm not supposed to be free. I wasn't supposed to even be given the opportunity to tell this story. And before I get started, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, stay free. I'm in prison, therefore I lost my freedom. I've still got about 9 years left on my sentence. That's a little bit more than halfway to go. I'm losing my mind because now I'm losing my friends inside the wall and I'm losing family members outside of it. I lost my father and my grandmother. Both times I was unable to say goodbye and unable to go to their funerals as well. They're still to this day not the type of closure that I needed. In prison, it's simple: survive or don't. Find a way to make it through or don't. I did not know if I had what it took to make it through at this point. I knew I had to stay out of trouble if I wanted to get home on time. I had already pushed my time back a little bit because of the fights that I had gotten into, and I was trying to get it back down. But when you're in prison, you're suffering from depression. Some days you don't want to get out the bed, and then you watch several of your friends lose their life to violent acts, including two that were about to go home. Not only does it increase the despair that's already in you, because you're losing somebody or you've lost multiple people that are close to you when they weren't supposed to go, but you're also taking on this mindset that it's not over till it's over. There is no hope. There's no need to have hope in the moment because I could be to my last day or my last weekend and I could be out of here because somebody's on one. Prison is a place where I liken it to a minefield. Some people wake up and they're violent towards somebody they don't even know in the pod just so they can go to the hole, or just because they feel like it, or just because they're on one. Let's not forget mental health. At the time this was all occurring, I lost not just Anthony, but Rambo, others. And I remember going to the mental health or the QMHP, the professional, and saying, I need help. Her answer was always the same: Seroquel or Thorazine. I said, I can't do that. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I can't take medication and be a walking zombie in an environment like this. I knew that everybody in this environment was not for me, on top of you never know what could happen day to day. A riot could pop off. I can't afford to be heavily sedated in this environment. It does not work. I cannot. She said, well, I can put you in some support groups. The support groups are a joke. What I'm saying is mental health is a joke overall. It was a difficult run. I remember being on the phone with my girl and she was just saying, it's going to be okay. And me being angry because she was telling me it was going to be okay, because that's what everybody was saying, but nobody could offer me any advice, help, insight as to how it actually would. I could not get outside of my thoughts, and I couldn't walk to a park and take a hike and be private to reset. I couldn't walk and go to my home and take a nap. I had to try to overcome these things inside of prison. So I had to escape the negative thoughts that were in my mind as I'm losing people, trying to make it home, hoping that I can navigate through this. And then I had to find a way to make it home outside of an additional prison. It was two prisons in one. It was hell. Thankfully, though, and I'm grateful for my brothers. Um, your brothers in prison, they become your support system, your family. You eat together, you break bread together, you hustle together, you work out together. You have to have a support system 9 times out of 10 in prison. I'm not saying that people don't stand alone, but it just is what it is. You meet brothers in there, they like the bears too. And next time you're having a conversation, and it's so forth and so on. And I had a brother in my life by the name of Keith, man. I was so grateful for him. Tattoo artist, um, according to his words, pretty boy. I had to mention that. He always say, when you introduce me, you worked out, got money, always had a female companion. He had did over half his sentence. He was on the downward, as they call it, in the single digits. And he was somebody, man. We had known each other from previous camps, from Sussex too. We're on Greensville now, but he was somebody that, you know what I'm saying, we just started building, just talking. He did some of my ink that's on me, and you know, we'd often talk about family, freedom, etc. And he's also somebody that I could have an intellectual conversation with and talk about sometimes some of the things that aren't always discussed in prison. We would talk about history and science and different things because we both like going to the library and reading and, you know, just learning why we had the time. That was always our thing. Well, we're gonna learn why we had the time because we both knew when we came home, oh, we was gonna get to running. So, you know, I never forget, like the last time I seen him, we was chilling, man. We were playing cards. He had a little bit of a gambling addiction, a little bit of poker addiction, right? And we're in there playing cards, and the officers had walked up and they told him, they like, man, you got to come with me. And usually when that happens out of nowhere, either something bad happened or you're being put under investigation, locked up, something. And sure enough, he was being put under investigation. The officers brought him straight to the hole. And luckily so, because he would have caught a street charge. He had his cell phone on him. So he was able to get his cell phone into the hole with him. And when he was back there, he sent his girl a text. And I guess they had been arguing or whatever. And he was just apologizing in the text or whatnot. Um, you know, he had reached out to other people. And then he took a sheet while he was back there in the hole, tied it around his neck, and decided he didn't want to be here anymore. I had lost people up until this point, but I had somebody to be mad at because of it. There was somebody that took them out of it, out of here, out of life, out of existence, just whatever. Violence was occurring, and I lost some people. But this time was different. Who could I be angry at? I didn't understand. I didn't know what he felt. I remember people saying, I don't, why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. And it didn't make sense. He was not a prime candidate. And if you've never been to prison, just know that this isn't a prison story. This lesson I learned right here, I just want to share, is to check on your strongest friends, the ones that have been through the most potentially, and you may not know about it. How you can identify them is usually they're the ones that are motivating, supporting, encouraging, and, you know, trying to keep people up, laughing. They're usually the people that don't want you to feel the pain or what they're feeling inside of them. Usually, check on them. We to this day don't have answers. It just doesn't make sense. There's two types of people again in prison. That there's ones that are fighting and those that have given up. And he was, from all what we could see, somebody that was fighting for his freedom. But evidently, he couldn't get home soon enough, and the pressure built up, and he decided he couldn't take it. Prison plus depression, not a good combination. I had lost years of my life. I was watching myself get older in the mirror. I was losing my sanity. I was losing friends. The only escape, because I couldn't do so physically, would to either be some sort of medication that would basically have me walking around the prison like a zombie, leaving me vulnerable and exposed, or try to channel it into something positive, which I did. I became a workout guy, as they say in the penitentiary. But even then, that didn't help me sleep at night. So I started to turn to other things. One of the number one, I guess, reasons that could have caused me to fall all the way down in prison would be alcohol. A lot of people don't know that while I was behind the wall, I did have an issue with drinking. How is this possible? Anything that's on the streets it's in prison. Of course, you have guys that make hooch, but you also have guys that make what you call clear. That's literally hooch cooked off into clear alcohol. Yes, guys make stills in prison. That's what we do. We survive. We live. I had a what you call a contract with one of the drink guys or liquor guys, where he already knew every time he came up, I was locked in for a specific amount. I had contracts with two or three guys. I was staying drunk. I wasn't smoking the funny cabbage as much because I didn't necessarily want to catch a dirty urine, which would cause me to stay longer. But man, that drink was on deck. It was my escape. I literally remember waking up, eating a honey bun with some peanut butter on it, and then going back to the cell to start, well, drinking a 20-ounce bottle of hooch. Substance abuse is a major issue in prison. If I could just, let anyone know that's watching this video right now that overdoses occur far too often in the system, and addiction is a very real thing, and it's untreated, and it's not talking or being talked about or spoke about in the media because there's no actual plan of action to address the issue. In the Commonwealth of Virginia alone, just in the past few months, there have been multiple overdoses, to include people no longer being able to be here. I remember one brother on the same institution, while I was battling with alcohol, he was battling with another substance abuse issue. He had overdosed and went out one night, and they put him, after rushing him to the hospital, reviving him, they put him back in the hole on the compound, and 2 weeks later they let him back out on the same compound, back in the same pod, around the same environment. And this time when he overdosed, he did not make it to see the next day. The city, the streets, the hood, the block is just like prison. The problems that plague us out here, they don't stop at the prison walls. If anything, they're more magnified. People are escaping their reality, and this is what I was trying to do. Alcohol literally was the start of what could have been my downfall. I remember I stopped taking care of myself. I was more concerned with the drink than washing up some days because I was that depressed and I just wanted to escape mentally. I remember just wanting to feel numb, and when the alcohol kicked in, I could almost feel it going through my veins immediately. I knew that I had a problem and an issue. Guys would joke with me and say, bro, you be in here partying 24/7. Like it was a good thing, which to some it would seem that way because I had the money to do so, but it was an issue because it was a volatile environment. Alcohol should not be drinking on a daily basis, especially in prison. And it would ultimately lead me to getting into one or two scraps, not just on the yard, but in the block, my cell partner, etc. I had an issue. I was drinking, I was angry, agitated, and now I'm still stuck in prison. It's bad. Um, the negativity is encouraged that environment. And I remember times trying to go to people, half drunk, just wanting to vent, just wanting to say, hey man, I wish I wasn't moving like this, because some of the old timers were wanting, they're like, yo, you good? You know what you're doing? And I would always say, yeah. But at the same time, I was screaming for help. I even signed up for substance abuse classes, just hoping that there was some magic key that they would turn inside my mind that would cause my anxiety to calm down, and for me no longer wanting to have a drink. Fast forward years later, I found out that my father, my biological father, was an alcoholic, and by the time he quit, it was too late. His body shut down, and now unfortunately he's on hospice. Addiction runs in my family. It doesn't just stop there. And looking back in hindsight, I can see how if I wasn't an alcoholic in that moment and somehow managed to be in prison, I was definitely on my way. And presently, I'm glad to say I don't drink alcohol, not even beer. Um, I live my life very specific because of this moment, this season in my life. I found a way in prison to not just have what they call street problems and be an alkie while other people were doing other substances, therefore I would justify what I was doing. But I found a way to lose a good job in an institution because there is something like that. It's possible to have a good institutional job. I started to argue more with my lady, who I was in a relationship with. I had support, but I was now drunk when I was getting on the phone. It was just as if I was on the street coming home drunk every night from work. I was venting about everything I was angry about while drunk to her, and it wasn't fair. I was taking things out on her. I look back at this chapter, I was a completely different person on the verge of losing it. Again, just not knowing what to do. I lost privileges to visits, getting into arguments with COs. And honestly, I kind of isolated. I stopped calling home. It was that bad. My mind was slipping. But I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I knew I had to stop drinking. I knew I had to figure out a way because, one, I've never been known to move like this. Two, I've always carried myself a certain way, and I don't want to be looked at as an alkie because, man, there are people that suffer from addiction in prison, and they tend to be even lower on the totem pole. I wanted my respect, and I had to fight to get my mind back right, but I just didn't know how. I didn't know where to start. And in an environment, after losing everybody that I was cool with, who could I talk to? Who could I lean on? Who could I start just communicating with about my problems to try to figure things out and identify which way to go? I didn't know. Even calling home, they couldn't relate to the problems that I was going through in prison because they had never been incarcerated. But I knew I had to fight. I knew I needed support, and I knew I wanted to get better before I allowed prison to destroy me. I'm in prison. I can't leave. It's concrete. It's steel. It's always sound. People are yelling. They don't turn the lights off. I got to wait in line for the microwave. I got to argue with people to get on the phone. The shower lines are crazy. There's no peace. The guards are on me. They're trying to tell me what to do when I don't want to do it. I can't even walk out my door unless they push a button, and I can't register. I can't register. I needed that drink at that time. I felt like in that moment, and maybe, I don't know, maybe in some weird way, even now, I feel like I needed to be numb because Lord knows in that moment, there was something in me I needed to let out. And I might have never came home. I was so angry. I was tired and exhausted, confused. I knew that I had did something, but all these years in, I'm still here. There's no relief. There's no change in the law. My lawyer had told me there's always an opportunity to get back in. I'm watching people apply for conditional pardons and all that, getting shot down. There's no parole. I'm not going home. So I'm not trying to hear it. I'm going to have this drink. Then I met Steve. Steve, man, he was all in all positive, good brother. We met one morning. He had the chessboard out, was reading a chess book. I had just got done working out, doing laps. I just asked him, I was drinking a cup of coffee. I was like, bro, you about to play anybody? He was like, nah. He's like, you trying to play? I was like, yeah. And that was it. Two guys playing chess in the middle of the pod. And next thing you know, it was count time. We had played, man, probably 3, 4, 5, 6 games, whatever. And I remember who won. I'm nice. But over those course of those games, we just, small talk. Got a little deeper. Chess is a thinking man's game. So the conversation got deep with the game. He's a good player. Was a good player. And we started talking about family. We started talking about our prison sentences. But the main thing we started talking about was them demons that we were battling. Like trying to be sober. He was battling substance abuse. I was battling alcohol. And by the time it was count time and we got done playing chess, we literally made a promise. We was like, bro, we're going to start working out. We're going to play chess. We said we both wanted to learn a second language. All that from that morning conversation playing chess, we was just like, man, we fed up. He was getting ready to go home and we both wanted to change. I wasn't getting ready to go home, but man, I was just glad to be around somebody that was getting ready to go home, honestly, at this time. Because most of the guys I was around, they were lifers that had more time than me. So the energy was different. The conversation was different. We could talk about the streets. A lot of times when you're in prison, you can't really talk about the streets or freedom because usually your cell partner or somebody may have way more time than you. You never know. But I was rooting them on. When I say bro was a real one and he was blessed, not only that day on did we really hold each other accountable when it came to sobriety, because there was a couple times when I slipped and he pulled up on me and we had a real conversation and he held me accountable. I seen him leading by example. Like I never seen him. He was always on his game. He was motivating people. He became one of the speakers for the NA program. It was just a lot of good stuff. On top of that, let me tell you something. He had won 2 lawsuits before he was getting ready to go home. One, he got hit in the face by a guard with a thing of milk when he was handcuffed in the back of a van on his way to get chemo. He beat cancer. He had bone cancer. I don't know if it was bone cancer. He had cancer in his foot. He beat that And he won another lawsuit because when he was in a medical transport van, they got hit. They got by another car. So this man, he had resources. He came from a good family. He was going home. He beat cancer. He had his health. He had it all. And I remember just, sitting there and some nights we playing chess. I'm like, yo, what you about to do? He's like, man, I'm about to get this clothing line going. I'm going to do this auto body shop. He would show me, the different stuff that he was coming up with drawing, because he was a real good drawer, artist for his clothing line. I was like, yo, this only going to be fire. And we talked. And he was like, bro, when you get home, you already know what it is. I'm going to make sure you got all the gear. And I was excited. The day came when he was able to go home or ready, he's walking out the door. And we got his number, me and a few of the brothers, and that night we had called him. And when we called him, like, we was lit, we was excited, but we ain't stay on the phone because he was with his family, his old lady. We was just happy to hear one of our brothers free. The second day we called back, same thing, man. We was lit, excited, you know what I'm saying, just all the way turned up. One of our brothers was free. He was telling us everything he was getting ready to do, boom, boom, boom. But let me tell you something about prison. When somebody walks out the door in prison, that's when you start hearing everything that's true about a person and the rumors. Everybody that didn't like a person, they start putting their business out there. And the ones that they feel like that person left behind, they start putting their business out there. And immediately we started hearing, rumors about, the brother Steve, that he was using strips, not the sabak, or not actual downers, or I don't know what the word is, but strips were used as substitutes for a more serious downer, if you get what I'm saying. We never seen this. I never seen bruh under the influence of anything. We worked out, we made meals, all that. But you don't know what a person doing 24/7 in prison. What I do know is, on top of hearing those rumors, on the third day of us calling him, instead of him picking up, his mom picked up. And immediately she told us that he's gone. What happened? He evidently did come home with some sort of addiction, which we learned later on. And on his third day, instead of him using the strips, he went for the more serious downer, if y'all follow me, that he had access to now on the street. When he used it the first time, his body wasn't ready. He overdosed. The people that were in the car with him, instead of them calling 911, they kicked him out the back of the car on the side of the road and left him to die on the side of a forest preserve. That was the moment I already had it etched in my mind, for numerous reasons, that I was going to keep on with my sobriety, for a way to honor my friend, at least in those walls. I understood the seriousness of it, and I learned real quick the harsh reality that if I walk out these gates with something bad can happen to me too. I wish I could tell you he's the only brother that went home and within the first 2 weeks didn't overdose, you know what I'm saying, and pass away, but it's countless. It's countless. I wanted to tell this part of my story because I have to highlight the substance abuse issues that are going on right now in Department of Corrections. They've been going on for years, and it's no secret that a lot of the staff, etc., they're the problem. They're enabling these things to happen. I was tired. I had lost double digits the people that I had rocked with. And now, I didn't want to be close to anybody at all. I was going to isolate. Sober, yes. At least I try to be. Not trying to rock with nobody? Nah. Because I'm losing everybody that I'm cool with. Now I just want to get home. I've watched people survive prison only to go home and allow prison to take them out. A lot of people. People come home from prison more times damaged than healed. More times damaged even more than when they went in. And yet we still expect people to come home from prisons to be better and be successful and be productive and do great things in the world when we haven't even treated the root of what caused them to be there in the first place. On top of that, there's nothing in place to help people be safe, grow, heal, etc. in prison, truly. Prison is a traumatic place anyways, and that's why I continue to beg anyone that watches my content to make sure you just check out a therapist if you've been to prison, or just make sure you're okay. Stephen has lost his life this time to substance abuse. Another brother, Tommy, as well, with only 2 weeks after being home. Star, maybe 2 months. Yogi, the police had got behind him. He had something on him he wasn't supposed to, and he swallowed it, and he was gone. The list goes on and on. And it's abundantly clear to me at this time of my prison bid that I got work to do. I cannot let it take me out in here, and I got to make sure it doesn't take me out when I get home. People go home with mental health issues, and sometimes it's not substance abuse. Sometimes it's people unaliving themselves. I got a list of those brothers too that went home, finally were able to experience freedom, hugged their loved ones, and within a short period of time said, enough is enough. I got to go. This is the reality of prison, and this is why I continue to say rehabilitation should be in place. At this time, it wasn't getting better. Things continued to elevate and increase when it came to my feelings of desperation and just feeling like I couldn't escape. I couldn't beat this thing. It was going to take me out, but I knew I wanted to fight. I was now to the place where I was sober-minded enough, and I wanted to honor my friend who wasn't strong enough to continue to fight by making sure I got my part done. So I started to move forward. And I started to move out of my shell because there was a time and a place where I wanted to be isolated. And I moved into a place where I said, man, I'm about to start getting active again. I started working out, started cleaning up again, getting my hair cut, stopped drinking at this time, obviously. I got a decent job back working as a tutor. I was back in motion. I was back bidding. It didn't mean that I was less hurt or less impacted by what was going on or what I had been through or who I had lost, but I had to keep going forward. It was around this time I met a brother named AZ. AZ is good peoples. Loudmouth cat from New York, high yellow skin. Thought he was a pretty boy in his own right. Super smart. Just funny, man. Sarcastic type funny, man. This is my people, right? And, I remember AZ was one of those people, and I don't think I ever really got to thank him, man, but he was one of those people that when I was down, he helped pick me up. And if you've ever been down, there's certain people, they don't even know what you're going through, but they have added value to your life, or they've motivated you, pushed you, etc. And when I started working out with AZ, because he was like, bro, let's start working out. We got into boxing, stuff like that. It was just a different mindset. And he was also in a relationship with his girl. We would talk about what we were going through in our relationships, family. He was somebody else that was also getting ready to go home or close to going home, etc. So we had things to relate to. I remember one time we was out playing basketball. It was probably like 80 degrees, something like that. But it was getting evening time. We were on the basketball court, and all of a sudden AZ, probably like 2 or 3 games in, he starts clutching his chest. He says, bro, something don't feel right. I think I got to go to medical. Me and a couple of the brothers stood him up, and we tried to walk him to the water to get him some water, and we were calling for the CO, and we walked him to the water. He's like, I can't really. He's like, hold on. It just don't feel right. Like my legs feel like rubber, all that. Finally, after calling the CO for about 3 minutes, they finally came. What was crazy is instead of them bringing a wheelchair for him to go to medical, they walked him to medical. When he went to medical, he told the nurse that he had chest pains and that he didn't feel right. He had slight shortness of breath, and his head was, pounding a little bit. Her response was, take 2 Motrins, drink some water, go back to the dorm, lay down, you'll be fine. We'll make sure you see a doctor in the morning. So AZ looked at her as the professional in that place, and he walked back with the CO to the dorm. When he got back to the dorm, he collapsed in the breezeway. The reason he collapsed is because he was in full cardiac arrest. There was a CO named Mayo there that he had a decision to make. It was call for help, understanding that he just came from medical and they're probably not the best help, or call for help outside. Now, what he did was he did call medical first, but their response was, well, he just came from here. Are you sure? In the amount of time he would have spent arguing, trying to basically convince them that they need to be here, it would have added on probably additional 5 minutes. It takes on average 5 to 10 minutes for medical to get to you if you're having an emergency, especially on that compound there. So because he felt like he couldn't wait no more, he called 911 from within the prison. Not the ambulances, police, fire truck came. They came and they got AZ. They rushed him to the hospital. They saved his life. Within that shift of AZ's life being saved, they had fired the CO male because he called 911. Because he called 911 to save a prisoner's life, he got fired because they said he went out of protocol. And in other words, you made the prison look bad, son. That is the reality of what happens. And thankfully, AZ made it, but countless people have lost their lives behind those walls because of inadequate health care, inadequate medical professionals on staff, etc. I've watched multiple people lose their life behind cardiac arrest, and because of the delay or wait time that it takes for them to get to there, they're gone. And on top of that, if we were to help them in that environment as prisoners, we could potentially get a street charge because we touched them. And if they deceased, there's no way for them to prove that we didn't do it. It's that type of environment. And when you're sick, you're in a very hopeless situation. But I was glad that AZ made it. And it actually instilled a little bit of hope in me when he came back to the dorm, because he still had hope in him. And he reminded me that it's not over till it's over. As bad as it looked, it wasn't over. And he reminded me that. So I kept going forward. It was time to fight for it. It's time to start shifting my mindset. But let me tell y'all something. When you decide to really be positive in prison, just like in this world, that's when the real opposition comes.